I just heard Seto Kaiba make a gimp noise. My life is complete. We opened this week in a classroom where one student just couldn't keep his eyes off the fact that they somehow managed to fit a whole damn bakery into there. Yeah, this kid was in love with his admittedly really hot teacher, so much so that he pretty much confessed his feelings right in front of the classroom. Yeah, it's just a good thing today's subject was trashy romance novels. Later, after doing some goat screaming, he wondered what his sensei was doing. Actually, I think she prefers drinking a lot of booze. Nah, of course, she was the lady we saw at the end of the last episode, who we would learn a little more about this week. Before that though, we got the opening to this series, which, appropriately enough, reminded me a lot of the one from Red Ranger Isekai, in that it had some very intense and yet stylized animation that actually did an effective job at showing off all of the major characters of the show, and even throw in some pretty awesome fights. The song Wannabe was also pretty good, being more Tate Lloyd stuff, though I do still prefer the remixes to classic Kamen Rider themes that we get in the show proper, as this feels a little too modern for the nostalgic themes that they have going in this show. Again, it's still quite good, I just don't think it's quite as god tier as the rest of the soundtrack. Anyway, we then learned the backstory of Yuriko Okada. And like many superhero origin stories, it started off with one really nerdy dad who decided to share his favorite Show Rider series with his daughter, in particular by introducing a certain superheroine to her. So, yeah, as we promised last week, a little context. Yuriko Misaki was a character from the 5th Kamen Rider series, Stronger. She acted as the title character's sidekick, electronic wave humanoid Tackle. Now, kind of obviously, she was a bit of a trailblazer for this franchise that was, and still very much is, a franchise focused on a young boy demographic. Allegedly, the creator of Kamen Rider Shotaro Ishinomori and his longtime producer Toru Hirayama had decided to introduce the first superheroine into this franchise after receiving letters from girls who wanted to play Kamen Rider alongside the boys. It was a nice idea, and Yuriko certainly managed to form her own legacy with some unfortunate caveats. First and foremost was... Yeah, she's not considered to be a rider, even though she does have a lot of the aspects of one, in particular Riderman, the sidekick to V3, who also didn't have a full face mask, and yet he's considered to be the 4th rider of the franchise. Now, supposedly, there were plans where she would have gone through a whole arc that would have gotten her recognized as a rider, but due to the franchise's waning popularity at the time, Stronger got a shorter episode run than previous series, and thus that storyline was cut. This led to the second caveat, which was Tackle's final fate.
Oh, that's a shame.
Had Stronger gotten more episodes, Yuriko supposedly would have come back as a full-on rider, but again, things just didn't work out. And unfortunately, the ramifications of this decision ended up affecting the rest of the franchise. Yes, sadly, this would set a bit of a precedent going forward, as while the next superheroine in the franchise would end up being an actual rider in Femme from Kamen Rider Ryuki, not only would she and other female riders be mostly delegated to movies and specials outside the main series, they would almost always be unceremoniously killed off. Thank you, Toshiki Inoue! Fortunately, things have gotten a lot better in recent years, with there not only being a lot less deaths, but some female writers even end up becoming the tertiary or even secondary protagonists of their respective shows. Though, like Cure Wing in the Pre-Cure franchise, their toys aren't treated as true mainline stuff because they are the opposite gender of the target demographic. Their items either happen to also be usable by the male riders, like how Izu uses the 02 driver after it was Aruto's final form, or their toys put on the highly limited premium Bandai online store, which was the case for Wing. Now, this is actually a very understandable concession, as ultimately the crowds who would want this would be rather niche and Bandai needs to make their money and all that. Granted, I think the bigger issue is them focusing on their QC issues, but that's beside the point, as ultimately this is the kind of diversity that has always been warranted in this franchise. Thus, rather appropriately, this Yuriko's backstory was pretty much the same as those girls who wrote those letters to Ishinomori, being a victim of bullying, who wanted to fight back like the boys. boys. In fact, in story, her dad named her after the superheroine to carry on that spirit. Meanwhile, out of story, the creators gave her the surname Okada, likely in tribute to Yuriko's actress Kyoko Okada, who very tragically passed away at the age of just 27 from a severe asthma attack. In fact, she and Stronger's actor Shigeru Araki aren't with us today. Hence why I think they didn't even want to use archival recordings of them like they did with V3 in this episode, and instead brought in a couple of veteran VAs who were able to imitate them quite well, Hideyoki Tanaka and Sumi Shimamoto. Both of them have long lists of credits, including Captain Falcon and Nausicaa, but I also get the feeling like they were doing a bit of a casting gag, as together they also played Detective Conan's parents. Hell, maybe this is what they were actually doing when not helping their son overcome his eternal prepubescence. But yeah, after like many girls who watched episode 30 of Stronger, Yuriko almost drowned in her own tears. Fortunately, her dad explained the concept of the heroic sacrifice and how much meaning Tackle's death truly had, which even if it did become an unfortunate trope in this franchise, it really did cement her legacy. And wholesomely enough, he even made her a makeshift Tackle cosplay, likely to go with his own cosplay. But still, really touching stuff, even if it did lead to Yuriko becoming an obsessive fan like Tojima.
2代目タックル先生、それ何ですか?
Also, technically, shouldn't the second Tackle be the AR World version? Later, the Temu Shocker guys decide to go on another heist, though this time their Yakuza boss decided to join them. I mean, again, dude, you have like 4 choices. Take your pick. At the same time, that one kid decided to confess his feelings to his teacher, which, yeah, lady, I'm pretty sure you should just immediately turn him down, especially after he ended up becoming a distraction from the robbers, in a pretty funny bit where they kept switching between the action and this trashy romance. As a result, Tojima managed to be the first to encounter them, however, she quickly caught up with them. Ai Kayano is an amazing VA. Thus, before he could hog off the action, Yuriko decided to do her own henshin into an outfit that showed a little more skin than the OG, likely to accommodate her extra muscles. And after politely pushing Tojima aside, Yuriko went into action with her own theme song, I Am Tackle, which was basically a modernized version of Sorayuke Tackle-chan, which they even played earlier in the episode when they watched the OG series. Also, fun fact, the OG Tackle's fighting style mostly involved her spamming the shockwave toss, which was a basic judo throw. This is due to Kyoko Okada being unable to do a lot of physical fighting due to her weak constitution, which again would tragically lead to her unfortunate passing. So, what do you think this version of Tackle would do to turn tragedy into triumph? See what I mean when I say this is a very loving tribute to what came before? Speaking of which, as Yuriko ran away to avoid the cops, Tojima was able to learn how Nakao was basically their equivalent, at least in regards to being a Shocker fan. So much so that he finally decided to commit to being a Kaijin, and I guess he went with Veil in the end. However, the episode ended with the biggest twist of the episode when they tried to commit another robbery and were seemingly stopped by another wannabe hero, but instead they got... This was a really good introduction episode, as well as a loving tribute to the first superheroine of this franchise. Like, even if you didn't know the story of Tackle and her creation, Yuriko's journey alone was touching enough that you could really appreciate her love for the character. Meanwhile, if you do know her behind-the-scenes origins and the legacy she left behind, then you start to realize how powerful the story really is. While I didn't grow up watching Kamen Rider Stronger, as I wasn't even born by then, it is easy to recognize Tackle's legacy and importance to this franchise. This is even more the case with Yuriko, who while also technically not having grown up on the show, as she was likely born in the 90s, Tackle did become an idol for a girl who wanted to fight like the boys before the days of Precure, which yeah, is kind of ironic considering another one of this VA's major roles. But that's the thing, even if newer, less dead heroines have been created in and out of the Kamen Rider franchise since then, the story of one heroine who sacrificed herself for her friend and partner resonated with her the most, and that's all that really matters. That was the main purpose of Tako's creation, and Yuriko was the personification of the love and care that people like Shotaro Ishinomori and Kyoko Okada put into the character. And yeah, it was hilarious to see this chick who had to heavily modify Tako's outfit just to fit her own measurements fight fake chakra guys with as much fervor as Tojima. Could have gone without the weird student who had a crush on his teacher, as he felt more like a distraction than anything, but still, it didn't take anything away from an overall really good introduction to this character, and tribute to the Oshi, who deserves a lot of respect for likely making female writers even a thing. Of course, now things are going to get a little more real starting next week, so hopefully Yuriko won't have to use that forbidden technique that seems to be the equivalent of Pikachu using Thunderbolt if we go by what the AR tackle did. Thanks for watching, and if you can't remember some of your childhood traumas, well, I think our videos can help with that. We've got something new coming out almost every day, including reviews of some older shows. Look forward to Idol Precure tomorrow. Until then though, farewell for now my friends, and hey, dude, could you do that somewhere else? You're burning up the rug.